Good evening. Welcome back to Talking Sheffield. I'm Nigel Slack, and my second half guests are all people who are involved in the donations for refugees, both in Calais and in Syria. On my right, I've got Sarah Wild from Sheffield Donations for Refugees. On my left, I've got Harriet Samworth from Sheffield Calais Waste Management.
That's right, yeah.
And then on the far end, we've got Shahid Ali, who's also from Sheffield Donations for Refugees. Welcome all.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in to talk about this.
Thank you.
I guess the obvious first question, which I suppose is to all of you really, is what are your organisations all about?
Okay, so Sheffield Donations to Refugees is pretty much what it says. We're looking at taking people's donations, and whether that be kind of stuff that they've got lying around that which they can't use anymore, or whether they want to buy something sort of brand new and donate it, and redistributing it where it's needed. So at the moment that could be sort of sending vans to Calais, to the refugee camps in Calais and Dunkirk as well, or it could be actually going to Syria, which is something we're working on now. Direct to taking them to people who need it in Syria, or we've also sort of sent vans out to Greece as well. So.
Right. Okay.
But also in Sheffield as well, so helping sort of refugees who've just arrived in Sheffield too.
Right, so new arrivals have an opportunity to gain something from your organisations as well. Excellent. And Sheffield Calais Waste Management.
Sheffield to Calais Waste Management Group started roughly last August as a national group. And then we decided as a national group that we would split up into sub-areas. So you have a large group in London, there is one in Leeds, but then also I thought, you know, I think we can have a good go at this. Let's start one up in Sheffield. And it stemmed from there really, and basically what we're about is that we help with sanitation and waste issues on Calais refugee camp, and then just recently in Dunkirk as well. Up until August, there was very little sanitation facilities on site. There was an extreme problem with waste that would mean that there would be a lot of spread of disease, and it, you know, really not a good place to be pitching tents and living. So we go on weekends. They usually last about 3 days to clear up the waste alongside refugees as well. So that's predominantly the work that I've been doing alongside fundraising for that. So
okay. And, I mean, you've all been to Calais. You've all taken part in the trips over there. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences there? What was it like, and what are the conditions like for those refugees?
Well, I actually went in, was it November when we went?
it was
October when we went. When we tagged along with Harriet, there was 8 of us that went, and me and 7 other friends. And we didn't really know what to expect actually. We'd heard all these stories, we thought, you know, let's go and see, let's see what we can do. End of the day, it's a humanitarian crisis as well, and we saw all the pictures, but in reality as we drove down we actually didn't know what we were going to expect to see there. You know, was our safety at risk, were we going to get robbed? Yeah, there were all these things that went through our minds, but when we got there we had a couple of guys from Sheffield who'd been there for a week or two actually volunteering. Right. And they said to us, when we stayed in the hotel, and they said, look, don't have any breakfast, you're having breakfast with us. And they came and picked us up in the morning, took us straight into the camp, and we were actually shocked. We're having breakfast in the camp. And they're like, oh yeah, it's the best breakfast you'll ever have. And that was our initiation into the camp, to be honest with you. And it was such a welcoming atmosphere. We were taken into this little shack, really, and we were given an Afghani breakfast, right, which was absolutely fantastic. Honestly, it was absolutely beautiful what we had, but unfortunately it was raining that day, and it was like being at Glastonbury. We were caked in mud. I mean, I took my car down, and it was caked inside, and it just those conditions that people were living in, walking around in the mud, the tents they were living in, the accommodation was absolutely awful. The belongings they had just had the bare minimum. We saw people. We saw young children without any parents, without anybody older looking after them. And there are organisations on site who do try and look after children, but they have to first find them.
Yeah.
And we ended up taking one young child under our wing and finding the appropriate place for him to get help from. And we did it by the end of the day, thankfully. And they took his details and his contact and made sure he gets fed and he has somewhere to sleep. But yeah, people are resilient as well. Yeah, we saw a lot of resilience. We saw a lot of development. There's a lot of businesses cropping up, small businesses within that community, whether it might be restaurants, I say restaurants, but little shacks really.
Yeah.
But it was fantastic to see as well the positives, but obviously the negatives far outweigh, what the reality is. And we found that, and for me it was shocking to see that there were so many people there that actually used to live in the UK, and they'd gone abroad for some reason or other, but they didn't have the relevant visas to get back in. I mean, some of them had families here, they had children here as well. They'd got cases with the British Embassy in France, lodged there, but they didn't know how long it was going to take for them to be seen, what was going to happen. And there are, I mean, going forward we'll possibly talk about it, but for me personally it was an eye-opening experience, and it was something that has kept me sort of engaged to go to work again, something like that, and that's why I joined these guys and I started helping out a lot more.
Because it's, I guess it's difficult when you are a visitor there. You're not there 24/7.
No.
You wouldn't be spending the night sleeping in the mud, having to deal with that sort of torrential weather on a day in, day out basis. So it must be difficult to get a real feel for how they're coping out there. But it's clear that they're human beings who are trying to make life as normal as possible.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's an important thing that is missed often in the hysteria about immigration, is that they are trying to make a normal life for themselves. It's not about surviving on handouts. If they can make something for themselves, they'll do it.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, like when we'd finished, we'd been on camp for literally 20 minutes or so, and there were guys coming out and they wouldn't let us push the wheelbarrow of rubbish. They were like, no, we're doing that, And it wasn't about going and clearing up for refugees. It was about actually providing the equipment and the facilities to be able to make where they're living just that little bit better. It wasn't a cure, but it was definitely, the steps towards making it just that tiny bit more bearable.
Okay. Now, one of the things obviously that's very big in the news at the moment is the concern about the demolitions that are taking place. What can you tell us about that? What are you aware of in terms of what's happening currently in the demolitions?
What's happening currently is that the government is in the process of clearing the southern part of camp.
This is the French government?
This is the French authorities. The French government are wanting to clear that southern part, and last week they were taken to court by the NGOs, and the charities, it's Le Berge and MSF, and Help Refugees, all got together and put an opposition in that. Not to say that Calais refugee camp is a good place for people to be, not to say that this is the solution, but to say give us some time and provide adequate places and somewhere for these vulnerable people to go. They actually, the authorities said no, we're going to go forward with the demolition. So on Monday they started that process, but in the court case they very clearly said that they would do it in a humane way. But actually, 50 riot vans, loads of police, tear gas, batons, that's not a humane way to go about anything. I mean, on a little side note, the charities did a census on ground, and I'm sorry, I just have to look at my numbers. It revealed that 3,455 people inhabited that southern area, of which 305 were lone, unaccompanied children. And the French authorities only had space for 1,156 refugees. That's alternative spaces like your detention centres, alternative camps. So on Monday, 2,299 people were made homeless. on our doorstep in a very inhumane way. And I think for me that really angers me, that you can treat another human being in that same way. You know, I think so. And the process is still carrying on with the demolition.
Now, there have been stories that the French authorities have agreed to leave many of the common buildings, things like the schools and the kitchens, as standing structures so that they can still be used by the rest of the camp. Is that? Are you aware of whether that's happening or not, or are those being cleared as well?
I'm not sure.
I can't comment on that because I actually don't. I'm sorry about that, but I actually don't know that information. The only thing that I do know is that the founder of the school, I think the school may have been affected because the founder of the school was arrested trying to prevent police going in. So I'm not. I don't want. Don't quote me on that one.
No.
Yeah.
Because that's always one of the difficulties with these sort of situations. What the authorities are saying on the one hand, and what's coming out in terms of actual experience on the ground can be two very different things.
Yeah,
and that's obviously one of the things that is important to acknowledge.
I'd just like to add as well that a lot of these people, one of the things that struck me about Calais was the stories that I was hearing about people and the horrendous things that had happened. The stories of people whose whole families had been killed. I spoke to one lad who was about 15 and his whole family had been killed, absolutely everybody, and he was terrified that he was going to be taken by Daesh to be a soldier, and he managed to get out of Syria. So the way that this has been done, of people that are suffering from probably from post-traumatic stress disorder and have had such horrendous things happening to them, that this kind of way, I mean, I read a lot of reports that said that a lot of refugees were woken up at about 7 o'clock in the morning to the police with standing there in riot gear with tear gas and water cannons, and to do that to a people that have already suffered so much, atrocities that we probably can't imagine on the most part is just really upsetting, really, that's been done in that insensitive and inhuman way.
And you've commented briefly already about the unaccompanied children, because that's been a big concern for a lot of people, saying, there are, as you say, families or young children who are there completely unaccompanied because their parents haven't made it or their siblings haven't made it. You've mentioned that there is a structure there to help with that.
Yes.
Is it working for them?
I think this is quite important to raise the issue of what volunteers have provided and what governmental authorities have provided. And what the volunteers have provided is a basic structure where they get fed, clothed, looked after. They know where the children are on camp, and the children know that if they need help that they can come there. As in terms, I've been asking the same question myself as to whereabouts those children are now, because my concern is that they've got caught up in this demolition and they've either fled because they're afraid, or they've just got slipped in, out into the nowhere, really. I think in a direct answer to your question, they are incredibly vulnerable, and I think that they are the main reason why our government needs to actually sit up and do something.
Yeah.
Because they,
Okay. Now, you mentioned briefly, we've commented on there is that alternative camp at Dunkirk. Now, not a success when it started. Big tent city, demolished by a storm virtually overnight. I understand from what I saw earlier today that MSF are now finally getting to the stage, that's Médecins Sans Frontières for those of you that don't know, are finally getting to the stage of actually putting up some proper shelter in those locations, so actual wooden structures, wood buildings.
It's a separate camp in Dunkirk itself.
To the authorities one?
Yes.
Right.
I mean, one of the big issues with the current camp at Dunkirk is that they haven't been letting volunteers in there. They haven't been letting the infrastructure be built. So whilst at Calais these kind of wooden structures have been popping up more and more, making a more permanent space for people to brave the elements, that hasn't been able to happen at Dunkirk. So it has just been flimsy tents that volunteers have kind of smuggled in, if you like, past police. So it's quite exciting. I don't know a great deal about the new camp that MSF have put up, but it's quite exciting that there will be a proper...
Yeah, because again, it's that thing about being able to give people the opportunity for a more normal existence while they're waiting for whatever solution there might be to this crisis in northern France.
The new one opens on the 10th of March.
Right, so they demolished the old one, the new one's not quite ready yet.
No, that's true.
Somehow reminds me of a home government as well, but there you go.
Absolutely.
Now, obviously one of the things that you've commented on already is the French police. And I understand that it is the French riot squads, the CRS, who are actually policing those areas and those camps. They're not known for their gentility from when they were set up in the 60s. How did you find the police presence over there?
When we went ourselves.
When you were there as volunteers.
It was that last, because we've been on sort of 2 waste management trips now, and it was the last time we were there. We haven't actually seen them much on camp, have we?
No, not really. Apart from on the Chemin de Dunes, they now line up, and you're not allowed to park on there anymore.
And we did get followed. Our minibus got followed, and we were actually trying to find somewhere to buy some wine on the way home, and our minibus got followed because I think they suspected that we were going to a discreet location to perhaps pick up or help some refugees. So apart from that, and there was a sort of a bit of a riot while we were there, but we weren't, I think there was a bit of a police incident while we were there, wasn't there? So,
So it's tended to be more a threatening posture rather than an actual involvement on the camps most of the time.
Okay. You know that they're there.
And anecdotally, it seems that a lot of these situations happen at night or very early in the morning when there aren't so many volunteers there, and it is. So.
Okay. Now, moving on from Calais for a little bit, you also try and support refugees that are still in Syria, those that haven't been able to make it out yet. How do you manage to do that?
Well,
you start.
So through Shahid and some other members of our group, we've sort of teamed up with a charity called Families Relief.
Well, basically, how I got involved was I saw this on Facebook that they were doing some collections for donations for Syrian refugees in Greece, I think it was initially. And what Val and Sarah were doing was receiving donations at Sherrill Junior School, and then twice a week, Thursdays and Saturdays between 11 and 1, sorting out all the donations into the sizes and men, women and children, which is fantastic because one of the things we found when we were in Calais was that people were bringing donations and they're dumping them at the distribution points, who then had to sort them all out.
Right.
And that was a big headache, to be honest with you. So it was fantastic what they started doing, started helping out, and they were giving the donations that they boxed up to an organisation in Huddersfield. So Riasset used to drive up to Huddersfield, or has been driving up to Huddersfield, drop the boxes off there, and they used to ship it across to Greece or wherever it was going. And then Riasset really had the idea that we should send our own container.
Right.
And he's been one of the core volunteers for a while now, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And therefore they started fundraising, and they've raised over £6,000 already. This was about a week ago. It's probably a lot more now. And since then we've been collecting the donations for clothes at Oldshire Junior School, and what they're going to do is actually they've booked a 40-foot container for 12th of March, so 14th of March, which will be coming here into Sheffield for a 3-hour period at a cash and carry in Attercliffe somewhere. And what they've let us do is actually we bought food on bulk, en masse, that is going to be palletised and put at the bottom of the container. I think it's 20 odd pallets of food that are going to go in. That's rice, chickpeas, tinned tomatoes and things like that. And then on top of that, we've got boxes of clothes to put on, any of the little bits that we want to put in. And then we'll be sending that through a charity called Families Relief, which it operates UK-wide, but it has an office on Abdare Road in Sheffield. Right. So they're a local charity as well, and the people who really manage it are local people as well. So that's how some of us are known for quite a long time as well. And it'll be going over land to Felixstowe. From there it'll be going to Mersin in Turkey.
Right.
and via ship,
overland again.
and then overland again to northern Syria through a border town called Killich.
Okay. Now, just thinking now about the response from Sheffield, how would you characterise the response from the Sheffield people to
Absolutely.
the requirements
Fantastic.
that you've got?
Amazing, yeah.
They've just been superb, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Obviously, however, you still have needs, you still have things that you want. How do people get in touch and how do people get involved with the organisations?
Yeah, so we've got a Facebook group which is probably, I don't know whether people love or hate Facebook. It's a very useful tool
Yes.
for kind of raising awareness and asking for donations. So we've got a Facebook page which is Sheffield Donations for Refugees. We've also got an email address which is sheffield.dfr@gmail.com if you don't do Facebook. Or you can come along every Thursday and Saturday between 11 and 1 where we actually do our sort of volunteer days. Or you can drop donations off every day at Sharrow Old School, or also at the cricket.
Peter Street, yeah.
Peter
But we
Street, yeah.
we kept it at Sharrow Junior School because that's.
So
full-
if people want to just
Yeah.
poll up on the day, Sharrow
Yeah.
Junior School's a place to come,
Yeah.
Thursdays and Fridays.
Yeah, well,
Thursdays and Saturdays
for
for
volunteering, but actually every day for dropping donations off except Sunday. So
'Cause the Old Sharrow Junior School, the staff there have been absolutely fantastic.
they really have,
Yeah,
yeah.
they take all the donations in, keep it for us, and then
Yeah.
pass it on.
Okay, smashing.
Slightly different. If you want to join, yet again, Facebook.
Yeah.
Everything's there, isn't it?
It is.
If you go on the Sheffield to Calais Waste Group, any information on there will be about future trips, anything that you can do to contribute. But also on Saturday at 1:30 outside the Sheffield Town Hall, we'll be having a peaceful protest in opposition to the treatment of the refugees in camp with the demolition. So if people want to come along to that, that'd be really nice. Get your banners out. And,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
That's great. And in terms of the future, briefly, what's planned for the future? We've got the container going to Syria. Is there another trip to Calais in the offing?
In the future, not precise dates yet. I think that this week has tipped how we can particularly help and how we're useful and what the needs of the refugees and how we can best help with that. So that in the future, hopefully a trip to Calais, but I'm with these guys as well, so anything that isn't suitable for Syria might be suitable for Calais. So
Can I just say also, one of the great things that we found is the redistribution of goods and clothing and things that we've sent down to Calais. We found that there's a lot of things there that aren't actually needed. We've actually had people bring some things back here that we've then redistributed elsewhere. Suits people have been donating. I don't think there's a real need for suits in some place, but we've been donating them to Suit Works in Sheffield. So nothing's really going to waste.
No,
which is the
nothing
good.
goes
So
to
no
waste.
matter what you've got, if you bring it along, you guys will find a
can
use for
support
it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can say the sort of priority things that we're collecting. If you want,
please.
so in terms of Calais, we're sort of looking at sleeping bags, tents, wind-up torches, are really useful. Are the kind of emergency items they're asking for. And in Syria, really all warm clothes for all sizes.
All right, lovely.
Yeah.
I have to put
So-
it to an end there.
All right,
I'm afraid,
thank
Graham.
you.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.